Do you find this to be a problem with contemporary opera in general? Or?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that they want to be so, some of them, so clever and so absolutely try new things, and it's not anymore any way to find yourself. You know, I mean, the instruments, they can do it because the instruments are a piece of machinery. They are instruments, you know. But the humans to do those kind of intervals, you know, doesn't matter how musical you are, for the voice is not good.
By the time this will have been broadcast, you will have sung a performance of Aida in Newark. And you've recently sung Les Contes d'Hoffmann and Ballo Masquerade in Cologne, which is, those three operas in themselves. I mean, tenors usually travel from place to place these days with one opera. And out of each of the schools you sing in, and we haven't mentioned Wagner yet, because this is something that, when I first heard you, I said to myself, my God, Lohengrin. And you've sung Lohengrin.
Yes, I did.
There have been rumors at various times of a Tristan. Do you plan to?
Well, it has been rumors and very well based because I was. By now, it has been like the third time that people has been talking seriously to me about Tristan, and it's the third time that I say, well, no, I think I can wait. I think it's a lot of repertoire I will jeopardize if I do the Tristan, and I don't think the public wants that anyway. I mean, I think the public want to hear me in the repertoire that they are used to hear me, and I think for the Lohengrin I should be waiting. It's always time.
So we...
At the Lohengrin, the Tristan.
The Tristan. What about the Lohengrin?
The Lohengrin, I have plans already to, in fact I will be doing it in the season 84-85 here at the Metropolitan.
Really?
Yes.
So 1 year after the centennial season?
The centennial
I think
season, that's 83.
83, yeah.
Well, we don't have to wait this evening for the post-centennial season to hear a bit of Mr. Domingo's Lohengrin. Let's listen now to a section of the third act duet from Wagner's Lohengrin. Our Lohengrin is, of course, Placido Domingo. Elsa is sung by Arlene Saunders from a live performance in Hamburg, West Germany, recorded in 1968. After we hear the excerpt from the Wagner opera, we shall proceed to the music of Giuseppe Verdi, and Mr. Domingo will discuss the Manzoni Requiem and, of course, Otello.
You have just finished performing over national public television and over many of the better radio stations and simulcast out of New York, the Manzoni Requiem of Giuseppe Verdi. And you have just finished the recording sessions, I believe, with Maestro Meta and Madame Carrier and the New York Philharmonic for CBS Masterworks.
Right.
How does this work affect you? Because it has aroused in the past considerable conflict of interest on the part of non-Italian Catholics and Protestants. And you are singing an opera. You're singing the Ingemesco of the Office of the Dead in the Latin Requiem Mass, but still, it is virtually an opera. How do you approach this particular work?
Well, it is a very interesting situation in this particular work, because you have to have both. It's the religion, the religious approach to the piece, and then on the classical form, but then you don't have to forget that Verdi was an operatic composer, and you feel it all across the world. You feel the operatic and the theatrical feeling of Verdi. So you have to be able to dosify both things in a way that you are making something artistic, something of the serious kind of concert performer, but then still has the excitement of those operatic moments, and then you have to find the right singers. For instance, I give you an answer immediately why it has to be that way. Have you ever heard a Verdi Requiem do by oratorio singers?
Yes, it's terrible. It's terrible.
You told me already the answer. You see? It's not way.
But yet there is this restraint that you must have, because in something like Otello, you are into the role. In something like Radames, it is basically a cardboard character. It is a spectacular that was written for the Khedive of Egypt. But here you have to strike this very strange balance in Verdi, because you can almost feel Verdi chomping at the bit, wanting to write an opera set to the Latin Mass.
So that's the reason you have to find the right amount of both things, and then it comes the perfect performance, if it can arrive.
Do you find singing the Requiem is rough on your voice?
It's very difficult, because first of all the Latin is a lot concentrated on the U and the E sound. Cum vix justus. So you have all the U's, all the E's. E, U sound, which in a way are not open, but you have to be controlling and singing piano most of the time.
Yes.
So most of the time, by the time you have to sing the Ingemisco in the work, you throw is quite tight, because of this kind of singing before.
It is just the kind of work that looks easy on paper. A friend of mine followed your performance on television with a score in his lap. And he had heard the work about 10 years ago. He's a musician, he's a composer, and he's simply not familiar with the Verdi Requiem. And he suddenly realized either how much better Verdi had gotten as a composer in 10 years, or how much he had grown up. And he was amazed at the sustaining of the line in your performance, because he could see on paper that this is one of the instances in which Verdi did not consider the vowel sounds. Because usually when he's up in the higher tessitura, you do have the sound and the o. But here, could this be possibly Verdi's constriction on the singer, to keep the singer from running away with the performance? Is this built in?
No, I think that he's following the prayer. When you approach the first B flat, mi qua, the E is already bringing narrow the tone.
Yes.
And qua, you have to sound the U before the O. Qua is a very difficult B flat to approach. It's one of the most difficult B flats to approach.
What is the role that puts the strain on a tenor's voice the most, do you think?
Well, there are different ones, but I think probably the four roles the four more difficult roles that I have sung is there are Othello, Arrigo in Sicilian Vespri, Hoffman, in the Desert Hoffman, and the Duke in Rigoletto.
You said there are four, yes.
I should say five. My God, I forgot one of the most difficult ones, which is the Grieux in Manon Lescaut.
In which you've had a tremendous success here.
Well, it has been very exciting.
Tremendous. Yeah. Now, the Duke doesn't really sing that much, and yet you feel it is.
Every time you come on the stage, you have the pressure on you. So that's what is difficult. No way to relax. Every time you are coming on the stage, you have to sing the most difficult passage. Every time.
So there is nothing to do standing around. There's no preparation really.
No preparation, and there's nothing, you know, every time you are coming in. So the 4 times you come on the stage, in every act, here it is. It goes everything at that moment.
And you simply cannot afford to slip up. There's
Not
nothing
at
to
all.
hide behind it. Really.
Not at all. No.
Well, before we turn to Mr. Domingo's discussion, a rather intense discussion, it will be of Verdi's Otello, let us listen to the love duet from the first act of Otello. Desdemona is sung by Renato Scotto, Otello by Placido Domingo. The conductor
today that not only sings Verdi as well, but also is so much aware of all of the minor quirks and difficulties in projecting any of the Verdian roles. Otello, of course, is something that you've sung recently with tremendous success and recorded with tremendous success. and now Rigoletto under Mastroianni. Can we talk a bit about Otello and how you came about with your interpretation? Because your interpretation and Mr. Vickers' interpretation are quite different, and yours is so powerful and so overwhelming. Mr. Vickers seems to be part of another opera in some respects when he sings Otello, but you are Otello when you sing. It's a miraculous transformation on the stage that I've heard so many people say the only other time they've seen something like this is when Callas sang, and she became someone on the stage. And this is the way you became Otello on television for me and at the Opera House. How did you get into this role originally, and when did you start singing it?
Well, my first Otello is now 5 years old. I did it in Hamburg in 75, September 28th, was the day. And by now, I have accomplished almost 60 performances of Othello. And the only thing that I can tell you is that, of course, is absolutely the dream, or is the role that have together all the possibilities, really, for a tenor. And most of the time, I ask myself and I say, God, why they don't exist more operas like Othello, where you can develop completely, where you can show your ability to be a complete performer rather than being a singer, you know. I mean, take Radames. You are on the stage and you are a singer. You are a singer. I mean, the involvement on the acting, as much as you can do, you can never approach the perfection. And I think Othello is almost a dawn part, a very difficult one, but everything is there available for you to feel it and to do it. And I think that one of the reasons that I have been able to do a portrayal of the role, which it has been very, very successfully accepted all around the world. And I mentioned the last performances I did, they were in Milan, and before in London, where in London the critics, they were talking, they say they didn't find words to compare my Othello to any other singer, then they have to go to the interpretation of Olivier,
Yes.
you know, say Laurence Olivier, to make any kind of parallel, you know. So that was very thrilling for me, because exactly what I like to do when I'm portraying Othello is to forget and make the people forget that you are singing. If you are able to forget that you are singing and you just get so involved, then you are portraying the characterization, then immediately is coming something magic, something that you don't realize what is in there. And suddenly you realize that that's it. You are feeling with the character, and you are not aware of a sound somehow, you know. You are aware of, then if you will take the sound on the television, you believe on the characterization as a silent movie, you see?
Yes.
You believe. And that's what I have been, and I think one of the reasons I have probably been able to accomplish this is because of the combination of productions I have done, being able to work with people, first of all, like Franco Sefirelli, and like Terry Hans, August Everling, and Ponell.
Do you find that your interpretation changes that much from production
Well,
to production?
I do have a very, very solid idea of the character, and I have discussed with them all the possibilities. But each one of them has come with a different accent. And I tell you, I think this is one thing very important which I might be different of other singers. even with my own strong feelings about the character, and all the help I have had from everybody. If right now I do another production and I find then that particular producer has something so special to offer me, but this is exactly different of what I have been doing, I will do it as well.
So you're open to
Yes,
constantly
I'm
revising.
open because I think that's the only way you can improve on a part. That's the only way that across the years you don't get a stereotype.
Yes.
And that's the way that the public, every time you are doing that role, they will have something refreshing.
Yes, stereotypes can be helpful with the public at first, but the public eventually wises up. They get
Yes.
smart, I think, and they realize.
For instance, after this series of Othellos, I was convinced that the characterization that most convined me it was the Zeffirelli one, and with the costumes.
Yes.
And so it was so much that I get the costumes from that production, and I was doing it all over with those costumes.
really?
Yes, with those costumes and But now I'm ready to change completely. I'm ready. The next Othello I will do something entirely different, and I will go from there on. And maybe one day I come back into the Zeffirelli one, and so trying to find what is important for me is to find the inside part that is according to whatever is the idea of the producer.
It's an amazing opera in that Verdi and Guito seem to have come up with a melding of the words and music, which you say that everything disappears for you when you sing. And sometimes when I look at a vocal score, I think, how can the world not disappear for the singer? Because every line, every word, even if you spoke it in the rhythms Verdi has set musically, it is so intense and it never lets up. How do you contrast this with singing something like Le Cid, for example, the Massenet?
Well, they are, I think, the important ingredients in a song, in a play, in an opera. The most important thing is the message you have to do, you have to deliver, and the inspiration on how to put that particular melody, those particular scenes, that particular drama in order. So I believe that when the inspiration exists, when the music it really delivers a message, you can always portray it. I mean, if you have the ability to be a singer and a performer. However, there are distances between the composers, and what happened is the whole Othello is a masterpiece. Yes, from beginning to end. The whole Bohème is a masterpiece from beginning to end. I cannot say that the Cid is a masterpiece from beginning to end. However, parts of that opera, they are a masterpiece as powerful as could be any of the Verdi or the Puccini.
For Mr.
You currently, I believe, are resident in Spain. Is that correct?
Yes, at the moment we are trying to live in New York.
Do you identify in any way with El Cid in terms of the country you've chosen to live in?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's a beloved character for Spaniards and for me in particular, and I like it very much. And what I said is that, for instance, the moment of the aria, it's one of the moments of the duet with Ximena, the duets with his father, the aria of Ximena. They are masterpieces by itself. I don't think that he was able to achieve a perfect, masterwork from beginning to the end.
Yes.
But nevertheless, you have to give the best in the master moments, and then you have to try even harder in those other moments that the music perhaps is not as interesting, to try to make it interesting.
You just recorded the two operas of the Trittico and Le Ville, which are not the most popular of Puccini operas, but are gaining in popularity, I believe, due to your CBS recordings. You and Madame Scotto have recorded very successfully with Mr. Mazzeldi's works. Will you be performing them on stage?
Well, Tabarro I have performed.
Yes.
I have performed many times. Schicchi, not yet. Perhaps I will do it one day. I would love it. And Le Ville, I was talking with Lorin, in fact, and it could be a very good idea to do a concert version of it, because it's a very, very, very powerful work. It has its moments of weakness, you know, but you can see really already the Puccini.
Even at the age of 23.
And I tell you something, I'm glad it's a very short opera, because if he was written a 4-act opera with the amount of B-flats that he wrote for the tenor, you will be voiceless, you know, absolutely voiceless, because he put B-flats there just like they were nothing.
Well, what operas have you sung that you no longer sing, and for reasons that you don't like the operas, or you have... When an opera singer, I presume, sings a role for the first time, he has a commitment to, well, one of my German friends from the Met says, an opera must have a Geschichte, the Storia, or else the audience shouldn't be there in the first place. What operas do you no longer sing at this point?
Well, there are many of them, but for different reasons. No, because they are not interesting, but maybe because of my kind of repertoire, they don't ask me to sing them anymore, and other ones because maybe they are a little too light for my voice at this moment, other ones because I find them perhaps very little interest. There are very few that I find a lot of interest, really. But the basic reason, for instance, I don't sing Così fan tutte, for instance. Because I did it in the beginning of my career, nobody calls me to sing Così fan tutte, for instance. Even though if they are doing what I can consider a king-size production of Così, I'll be willing to do it, you know. I mean, if you have a tremendous cast on the really Italian style of the Così, then it should have, you know, because Così is very seldom done very much into the German.
You feel it's too rarefied.
Yes, and I think that one should have a cast.
As an actual buffa.
Yes, and absolutely a cast, and it goes more into the Italian, I can say it. I mean, if for instance, I was singing the Ferrando and Cheryl was singing the Guglielmo, for instance, and somebody like Taddei was doing the Don Alfonso. Maybe somebody has I don't know, even I haven't never asked Renata if she will do, but if she will do Fiordiligi, Renata Scotto, or Margaret Price, well, she does it a lot, you know. And then to have a Dorabella, the type of either Troianos or Berganza.
Yes.
And to have a surprise in the Spina, then it could be either Freni or Kotrubach, something like that, you know. I mean, you are having a cast, then, I mean, it could be a complete different Così fan tutte.
12 different record manufacturers. The idea of putting that cast together. Who would be the conductor?
Well, I will...
Or would you rather conduct yourself?
No, heavens no. I will go for something like that. I will go for Jimmy Devine. I think that will be, then that will be the completely fun performance.
Yes.
I think, I have the feeling.
You said.
Some Mozart from Mr. Domingo.
And for instance, I give you another example, sorry. I don't sing any more Pearl Fishers. I don't sing Pearl Fishers because it's not done, you know.
Whole description of the Così being an Italian Così which I've wondered sometimes whether Mozart had in mind, because the Germans tend to consider this very rarefied music,
Yes.
absolutely ideal music where everyone stands still on the stage
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't move. But in the score, you do have this
Yeah, yeah.
potential. You've worked in Germany. Do you find German productions and stage directors to be overly serious and productions that don't take advantage of comic aspects of opera?
Well, it all depends. I have seen comedies. I have seen comedies, and they have been masterfully staged. Masterfully.
Something
staged.
like Don Giovanni, let us say, which the Germans tend to take very seriously.
Yes, perhaps a bit. Yes, a bit too serious. But I think that the proceeding is different. You know, they have a different kind of approach. I mean, let's say that, I mean, for the United States, an opera singer is okay. They know that you can do something very special. They admire you, but you are there. An opera singer, they treat with kind of a reveration.
Yes.
The opera
religious,
singers in
somewhat
Germany
religious, yes.
and in Austria, you know. So it's a different approach, you know.
Have you sung in the Vienna, of
Oh
course?
yes.
It is on the Vienna Staatsoper,
Yeah.
which Mr. Mazel will become artistic
Yes.
director of in about a year and a half.
Mhm.
And he, in the interview he gave us and was broadcast here on November 2nd, was very enthusiastic. And I'm sure he mentioned you in the interview, of course. And are you looking forward to this relationship and
Very much,
performances
very
there?
much. I have been in very close relation with the Vienna Staatsoper. It's one of my favorite theaters. Have done many exciting things. The last thing, it was quite exciting because I have done a performance. They gave me the title of camel singer.
Yes.
And I have done a performance of Tosca, which I had to sing twice the aria of the third act in Vienna, which is the whole
Very
story.
unusual.
The
I've never
whole
heard of-
story of the Vienna Staatsopera, there have been 4 cases of this. One was Caruso doing La Donna Mobile, another was Lily Pons doing Una Voce Poco Fa, the other one was Gilli doing Te luceva le stelle, and in the new theater, nobody, personally,
In 30 years.
only Karajan did the sextet of Lucia. He did it, Seneca. And for me, I have had, in fact, I am stopping now. I don't think I will sing Tosca for a while in Vienna, because I have sung in 6 years I have sung 3 performances of Tosca, and the 3 times I had to sing the aria 2 times.
Each time?
Each time, yes.
And encores are practically unheard
No,
of.
on her.
Unheard of
And
anywhere
it
today.
was not way. I mean, it was matter of wait there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, and the applause won't stop. So I do have to do it. And after that performance, I have 52 curtain calls.
Too.
52 curtain calls. It was really I mean, I think the Austrian public is something by itself. you
It's
know.
a very knowledgeable public.
Yes, something by
musically.
itself. But I'm glad to feel that the American public is getting very warm. You cannot compare one public with the other, just like you never can really compare one performer to another.
Yes.
The same thing with the public. I tell you what happened. You take Vienna, for instance. The public, they are there, and the ones, then they live further away, maybe in 15 minutes there are other houses.
Mhm.
Participate more than in this kind of American public, which has a lot of difficulties with New York being such a complicated city to go around.
And yet you're trying to move here.
Yes, well, that's something different. I don't have problems. When I go out the theater, all the traffic is gone, because I never go from the theater until hour and a half after I finish.
You know, we spoke with Murray Pariah several weeks ago, and that interview will be broadcast after yours. He said he prefers living in London, where he can go out with some of his fellow pianists, with Mr. Barenboim and Mr. Brendel, and go out for a cup of coffee and talk about music and perhaps compare interpretations verbally without newspapermen or the critics making a big fuss over the whole thing, and he feels much more comfortable there than here. Do you find that you're followed around all the time, and people want to know why did you not hold the high A as long last night as you did 2 years ago when you sang this? Or
No. On the contrary. On the contrary, here in the United States, I think that sometimes the critics, they are so apathic about, and they come to a performance of you, of Masked Ball, for instance, and the last time you sang the role is 10 years ago. And all they will say, Placido Domingo was very good as 10 years ago. I mean, that's ridiculous.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
Yes.
I find it offensive to an artist, you know, than somebody can. No. I wish then they will be more interested, you know. I mean, they come just to review a performance just because it's the. I realize that many things are going on, but then they should have more writers. You know, many things are going on. They should have more writers because I don't mind a criticism, never, you know. But if they know what they are talking about, because just to say he was as good as 10 years ago doesn't tell me anything, you know.
yes,
Doesn't
it
tell
just
me
shows that
anything.
they're not listening any better than they
Yeah.
did 10 years ago.
Yes.
Many opera singers have their own personal stories of disasters that have occurred on the stage to them. Has your career been notoriously safe from any mishaps on the stage, or have you had your share?
Well, many times you have either cracked your pants, fall, and so on. I have different situations. I have one here at the Metropolitan. I remember doing a Trovatore, and I had to jump. In fact, the premiere I did it, I jumped. It was like 7 feet down. I had to jump with sword in my hand and arrive.
Di quella fiera?
No.
No?
Arrived in the convent.
Ah.
Seemed to take Leonora from the count when the Luna is ready to, you know, just to take Leonora out of the convent. And it was the reviews I can remember said Domingo dashing with the sword, dashing Domingo with the sword in hand in the style of Douglas Fairbanks Jr. and Son. Beautiful. So what happened is, by the third performance, in order for me to jump, I have to hold a piece of decoration and then
Scenery.
jump.
Oh,
Scenery.
yes.
What happened is that part of the scenery that day was very bad attached. So I came down stage with this piece of scenery and I went on my knees, you know. I was very lucky not to break,
Yes, in kneecaps.
you know, not to break a knees or a leg or something. But anyway, the public, well, was one of those anecdotes.
Do you want to do a comic opera or operetta? You've recorded recently and released, and this has never caught on in this country, which is the Zarzuela material. I remember 20 years ago there were other recordings that London Records had been released, and frankly I am not of Spanish descent, and it is alien to me, but it's beautiful, beautiful music each time I hear it. I never give myself enough chance to be familiar with it. Do you want to work in operetta at all, in Lehar or?
Well, I have worked, I have done a lot, and but you never have time to do all the things you want, you know.
Yes.
It's that you have kind of, I mean, I am so involved in opera, and it's when some people ask me, why don't you do more concerts? Why don't you do recitals? Why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? It's so great, my commitment to opera, and it's hard for me to find time for other things.
Do you find that the operatic stage is most satisfying for you, that it gives you the largest and grandest scope?
Oh, definitely yes. For me, until this moment, yes.
So the idea of singing lieder or chamber music performances is not yet in the cards.
I will do it, but I think that the opera by itself is my life.
Can we talk a moment about Rigoletto, which has just been released on Deutsche Grammophon? with Maestro Giulini, which I believe is his first recording as a conductor in about 15 years of opera.
In 10 years, because
10
we
years.
did Don Carlos
Oh,
for
of
years.
course, of course. The
9
Angel
years ago,
recording.
10 years.
Yes. This was also, I believe, your first recording
Yes,
of Rigoletto.
yes.
But you've sung the role for many years.
Yes.
Why did you wait until this long? Did you feel that you were simply not ready, or no one had?
Well, no, actually, it never came, the offer to record Rigoletto. It never. If you go back to the Rigolettos that they have been recorded recently years, it was one with Pavarotti, which was Decca, of course, with Sutherland.
Yes.
So logically, that was his Rigoletto because it's with Decca and London, called here. And then it was another one of Alfredo Kraus, which has been very much identified with the Duke.
Yes.
So the thing is, I was always waiting to do the Rigoletto, and finally it came, and I think it cannot come at a better time when Giulini was coming back to record, so it's a very exciting recording.
How do you feel about the role of the Duke? I recently read Jan Pierce's autobiography, and he said the role was always an especial favorite of his, especially the contrast between the La Donna Mobile and Parsiani, for example. It's something that he said it's black and white in the opera, something that he's experienced in no other opera. The role itself he does not feel is that deep, but it is extremely trying on a tenor in terms of audience reaction because La Donna Mobile brings down the house, but the other aria does not. Of all the Verdi operas you do, let us put Otello aside for the moment because that is amazingly your role at the moment. Are you interested in doing the early Verdi on stage? You are one of the few singers that possesses these lungs of leather to burst forth with that slancio that Verdi always calls for, with these long lines. I mean, I can't think of any other tenor, quite frankly, at this time as an Ernani.
Well, that has been I love very much the role of Ernani. I have done it at La Scala.
Yes.
That was my debut at La Scala. And I've done it at the Met, in fact, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. And I'm looking to do it, and that's one that I will very soon also record.
Oh, wonderful.
And I will be doing in Florence with Muti. But I do love very much those roles. One outstanding role also for the tenor is the Rodolfo in Luisa Miller.
Yes.
And one outstanding and very difficult one is the Arrigo in Vesper Siciliana.
Yes.
So I'm very glad, I tell you, as a matter of fact, Verdi, I would love to record all the Verdi roles, even the less interesting ones, even Ismael in Nabucco,
Yes.
and Fenton in Falstaff. I hope one day or another, I believe I do have now about 15 complete Verdi operas recorded. I hope I can accomplish them.
Yes.
All possible.
What composer do you feel has written best for the tenor voice? You always hear people saying, well, it doesn't sit well with the voice. It is out of range. It's on the break. Lohengrin, for example, with the range between the E and the
Yes.
A seems to be a constant problem for many, many tenors.
Yeah.
Do you think Verdi is the best, or whoever? I mean, this is an open question.
To write for the tenor?
Yes.
I think Verdi, no doubt.
Do you find problems in the operas before Verdi, the Donizetti and Bellini, that there are pitch problems there? I've been curious about this, and I've always wanted to ask a tenor, because I don't think it makes that much difference in the female roles. But over the past 100 years, our conception of pitch, of the note A, has risen. And there are high notes in l'Elisir, for example, that recur, which were actually B flats to our ear today, or A's, which are now C's. Is there a particular problem with this? Do you feel that sometimes someone should actually record the opera in the key it was played in originally?
Well, I think so. I think that we are over generous singing today in order to please the orchestras and the conductors, which they are putting the diapason so high.
Yes.
I think that's something that it shouldn't be disregarded. I think we should insist on having the right diapason.
Right.
Diapason,
So
because we are all, I mean, you are right when you are singing, you know, all the Donizetti tessitures, you are
yes,
really,
it's grabbing at you.
I mean, you are really, like your neck is going to explode, you know, those high tessitures. And I mean, why? I mean, never mind, there are some voices, then they do it. But why? For instance, I don't find that the Elixir or the Don Pasquale should be sang by a light tenor.
No,
And most of the time it has to be the light tenor who sings it
because of
the high of the tessiture.
Yes.
But I don't find that those are light tenors. Those are not light tenors.
What about something like Fille de Regiment with the 16 highs? Once again, it
Yes.
was a minor
Yeah,
lower.
probably probably all those Cs, is the equivalent of a little bit more of a B flat today.
Yes.
You see?
Yes.
And now from Donizetti's L'Elisir d'Amore, una fortiva.
I have never seen, although many people who listen to opera in the dilettantish manner say, well, that's no good because he's transposed it down a step. And I would say to them, well, my God, it was even lower than that when it was originally sung, and you're
Yeah.
creating a false idea. Do you think that young voices are being killed today or pressured to push for these high notes and high notes only?
Well, no, when you have in mind only the idea of high notes, yes, many people get really sick and they get really killed by it, because what happens is they are only thinking of high notes and they are not concentrating, first of all, on doing the whole line, on singing interesting. And then they are teachers, sometimes they really burn singers just trying their high notes,
Yes.
you know. I think that it's very important, the high notes, but definitely it's not the only thing.
Recently, another tenor was speaking about singers, and he said that the essence of singing is concentration as one sings, a sense of losing oneself in the role. And this particular tenor said that the greatest concentration, the greatest effort, and perhaps the greatest performance he had seen of a singer in Otello was yours. The tenor who said this, by the way, was Mr. Pavarotti. Concentration is something that the audience very rarely thinks about. It's something that we are drawn into by the singer. We shouldn't have to think, now he's concentrating. Do you find that when you sing Adriano Lucubro or Andrea Chenier, as opposed to Otello, you keep coming back to Otello, but I think one always comes back to Otello.
Absolutely.
It's the essence of dramatic opera, really, of the entire operatic stage in history. How do you prepare yourself to go into something that does not call for such a sublime falling into a role? How do you pull the audience along with you? Is it something that you go into on stage, or is it something that is calculated on your part? Which
Well, I think that Stanislavski completely doesn't exist in the operatic world. Otherwise, you won't be able to produce a sound.
Despite his book on opera.
Yes. I think that the concentration exists and the make-believe exists. But sometimes you have to have the ability also to really perform. And when I say really perform, because otherwise, if you are living the whole time, you are in danger of being so intense, perhaps, but so much intense that things stay on the stage and they don't pass across.
Yes.
You have to be very careful. Once I saw a soprano, then I was in the public and I saw a performance and she wasn't telling me anything. Nothing. The next performance, I was backstage and I can see the same soprano in those moments which she wasn't telling me anything, and she was crying completely. I mean, she was crying and feeling as you cannot imagine, and she wasn't able to portray, she wasn't able to pass
to convey this.
To convey that to the public. So that was not any good. She was feeling and she was not performing. But you have to find the feeling and the performing together. You know what I mean?
There was another tenor who made a tremendous success in an opera by Benjamin Britten. And since he made the success, nearly every role that he has sung, whether it's Tannhäuser or Aeneas in Les Troyens or Radames, has this hulking attitude of Britten's hero in it. It's something that he has sort of laid over, like a patina, over every one of the roles he sings. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it looks silly, because to sing Florestan like a British fisherman doesn't work. You want the reaching for God instead of the hulking over.
Yeah.
But you have preserved this amazing independence of the roles you sing on stage. Your Otello does not pass at all into your performances in Tosca or in Chenier. You have a resilience in each role that identifies itself.
Absolutely. I think you have to be careful, and you have to make the difference. It could be a difference. Sometimes what happens is, in life is very funny. Sometimes somebody, in fact, is very much that character. And then they say, that person has performed so well that character. Why every time we see him in another opera is that character? It's because you have seen that person reflected on that character. It's not that character. It has to be performed that way.
The singer has finally found the role which expresses himself outside of the opera house.
Exactly, you know. So you have to be careful. You have to feel it. It's the walking, is everything. I mean, if I'm doing Romeo, you know, I almost walking, you know. It's the walking is you know, with the almost on the
toes of the feet, yes.
Almost on the feet, and the movements of the arms and everything is different. I mean, if I'm walking in Othello, I really have to walk, and my steps there are like a panther. The movements they are different, you know. They are round. The movements they are heavier, you know. Then you are portraying Rodolfo in Bohème, and you have to be a very normal. Bohème could be, in fact, Bohème could be done a production here at the village.
Yes. Yes.
A production of Bohème could be done at the village. Just really.
I think there was one.
The Bohemians really living in, you know, like 4 in 1 room, you know, and being able to share everything. I think it could be. So that's a play that could be very much our play today, you know.
But let me
Change from the subject of Puccini's La Bohème for a moment and listen to something very different.
On the stage, have you found that role yet?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Because the thing is this, I think I have quite a different personality on real life than I have on the stage. I think I am very much a no performer in life. You know, I think I just go as natural as I can in life, and I keep all my energy for the stage. So that's, in that respect, all the character, it comes on the stage, and I'm able to be a great suffering person on the stage. I'm a masochist when it comes to the stage.
Yes.
I love to suffer on the stage.
Can we talk for just a couple of moments? I know your time is very limited between rehearsals today and performances. About young singers. There seems to be a shortage of tenors in the world today. I think there was always a shortage of tenors in the world. Great tenors come along very, very rarely. And there seemed to be for a while this idea of start off as a baritone and turn into a tenor and sing Wagner and make your money and get out of the business. Where does a young person turn today? What repertory should he start with? How long should it be before he begins his solfège and walks into a performance of Traviata?
Well, let me tell you something. I do believe there is a little lack of trust generally on the theater to trust young singers, because that's a problem. And sometimes, for instance, let me tell you something that is very wrong. in the auditions, for instance, at the Metropolitan. Yes? They find a voice. The winner, it has a contract as a comprimario, the Metropolitan.
Yes.
How many singers have really developed? I mean, if you cannot give a first prize to a singer, if you don't believe he's able to be a first-class singer, don't give him any contract. Just give a contract to somebody that can perform tomorrow.
Yes. I'm
And
sorry.
I do believe that if you give a prize to a singer, then give him really the stardom.
Yes.
Maybe in a role that he's combined with other important people, you know, because it's really tragic in this moment, the situation. I mean, I will be in January. I will be 40 years old. My next colleague on age is Carreras, which is the youngest one of all, which is 34 or in his way to 35. And after that, where are the tenors of 27 years, 25 years old?
Yes. It's frightening.
29 years old, 30. I don't know how old is Shikov, for instance. That's somebody that has come later on of great quality. But even that, even Shikov being young, should be after Shikov. They should be already 3 or 4 tenors, and they are in the 25, 26, 28th year, you know.
Mm.
And we don't have that. And we don't have that almost in any of the different voices, but especially in tenors. It's really frightening.
What repertory do you think a young tenor should start with? I mean, a lot of conductors say Mozart. Of course, these were the German and Austrian conductors.
It really depends. That's not a rule, and that's a mistake, because not every voice could do Mozart. In fact, there are singers, and they have done a fantastic career, successful career, for 30 years, and they have never touched Mozart. So why should be a rule that Mozart should be the first one?
Yes.
If you have a voice to sing Mozart, it's a special style by itself, you know. And I think that, sorry, you have to see which kind of voice you have. If you have that kind of voice, you can sing Mozart. If you have a more Italian sound, then you have to start by the lyric repertoire, you know.
Yes, I've always been curious to know. The recital programs of young singers seem to follow the format of the early Italian songs, and then a group of leaders, and then a group of chansons. I've never been particularly enamored of the idea of a young singer singing Schubert and Schumann, because I don't think they're old enough. But there are so many wonderful arias and songs by Donizetti and Bellini,
Yes,
in very light bel canto style, that don't cause that kind of a strain. And yet, there seems to be this, at least in this country, this pressure upon them to sing a Winterreise or come out and sing the Ingemesco from the Requiem, which to me is something that would kill a voice if one isn't prepared for it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it has to be, unfortunately, the advisor of teachers are not very bright many times, you know. So you have really to be very careful. And in that respect, I don't think I am at the time I can advise. I will in the future, but as it is, I use too much my voice already with interviews and talking. If I will go into teaching, then forget it.
Yes.
Tomorrow I will. Some master classes I do. Before we talk about that, it's a little difference. I have done it in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Milano, in London, but I have never brought the TV cameras.
No, it's not
That's
a show for
something
the
else,
public,
you know.
it's for the students.
I have done it, you know, but that's different.
Can we talk just a bit in closing about L'Africaine, which is one of your most marvelous performances, and it's something that's not generally available, but it surfaces in various ways at various times. How did you get involved in singing this? You sing Meyerbeer, you sing French Grand Opera, which is something that's rarely done. You're probably the only tenor around.
Well, I have always been excited by the thrilling and the challenge of do unknown words. And I think among them, the music of Meyerbeer is a music really for the tenor,
Yes.
which is marvelous.
Which is probably why it's not done these
Marvelous,
days.
yes. And I have been a great lover, of course, of the voice of Caruso. And I identify, as strange as it is, being Caruso the greatest tenor of all times, and being the Italian tenor that he was, I think that some of the singing of Caruso that I love the most is his singing on the French repertoire. You hear his singing of l'Africaine, la Juive, le Cid, etc. is absolutely the best of Caruso. And I was inspired by that, and I said, I want to sing those works.
Mr. Domingo, I wish to thank you very much for
Thank
giving
you.
us so much of your time.
Thank you very much, has been wonderful.
And we look forward to hearing you at the Metropolitan Opera, and perhaps, and I believe at Salzburg also next year you're doing Count of Man.
Absolutely, yes.
Wonderful.
I do it now in Covent Garden also.
Wonderful.
I just did it in Cologne, so it's my Hoffman year.
Ah, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Strain. I don't know whether to call it folk or popular or something else, but it ain't opera.
Well, I think the word of popular is very self-explanatory, because I think that popular is somebody that is indeed popular. So I think the music doesn't have to be popular. It has to be popular wherever you sing.
But
know?
why is it that when so many opera singers try to do folk songs or show songs or carols or whatever it is, they sound like opera singers doing folk songs and carols. They have the same projection and the big sound, and it comes off sounding artificial and stilted.
I don't think I sound that way.
I know. I say some.
Yes.
Some.
I think in some of them, yes, because it depends which tessiture it has. You see, it depends when you have a song. I mean, like for instance, you are doing the chanson de Noël, you know. Then you need really to sound like
Right,
an
but
opera
that's-
singer.
yeah.
But if you are singing songs that doesn't have tessiture, you know, I think then you should be able to caress the microphone.
But do you consciously approach those songs differently?
Yes.
You
Yes.
do. You don't use the same kind of mechanism.
No,
to
no, no.
perform.
It's completely different. I think I think we were talking about, in fact, in the last time I was here, how much I would like even the opera to be able to sing it this close to the microphone, because you can do different things, and you are not able to do a bigger distance with the microphone.
So you're able to shade and then you're able to color in a way
Yes.
that you can't really do.
Yeah, and it's I think then, no doubt, and I mean basically, a singer is an operatic singer, as you said, is after all an operatic singer, you know. But you have to sing in some songs when the tessiture really is not very high and so on. You can sound like a pop singer, but except then the voice perhaps will be different. That's the only thing. Yeah.
What about the diction? Is that does that change? Can you be a little easier about it if you're singing in in a popular form?
Well, I think the diction is in the popular form is so important, so much more even than in the opera, because the diction in the opera, okay, is the people that knows the text. They are looking for it, but generally speaking, the people, they are looking for the expression, for the beauty of the line, and people that doesn't understand the language you are singing, they don't mind about the diction.
Right.
But in the popular song, they expect to understand what you are singing. So that's a very difficult thing to achieve, you know, in different languages, to be able to make yourself understood
Now, the
in a
first,
language that is not yours, you know.
Well, this language is more or less yours, right?
Yes.
We're
it
going to
is.
start with some tangos here, at least 8 tango. Now, where did this enter your life? Why tangos all of a sudden?
Well, tangos is because the Buenos Aires public, the Argentinian public, I think is one of the most enthusiastic, if not the most enthusiastic public of the whole world.
Really?
It's not to believe. When I left Buenos Aires this year, I was completely destroyed emotionally, because it's a life that you cannot believe. I mean, what it gets created by the people, by the whole media there. I mean, in New York, you are doing your thing, and that's it. You know, you do your performances, and more or less you have interviews, but you live a quiet life comparing to what is that. I don't have any minute of rest in Buenos Aires. The newspaper reporters, the television reporters, they will come even to the bedroom, you know, upstairs, and they will wait there. And you will be, every time that you were set a foot on the street, you will be followed, you know, by a camera, by an interview. It was not to believe, and the reaction of the public was really, I mean, the Othello performances I did in Buenos Aires, they have talked of being the best performance in 50 years of the story of the Colón. They don't remember for 50 years a success like that.
Well, we don't
But Othello-
remember an Othello such as you gave us either, but we don't necessarily make such a big media deal about it here.
because they make a completely media deal. Yeah, really, it becomes such an popular thing at that moment, and that's the reason. One being at the backstage door, they said, "Placido, do you sing tangos?" I said, "Well, I wish I did. I know some of them." So now I start to sing a line of a very famous one, as Mi Buenos Aires Querido. And I sang the line, and everybody started to applaud. I said, "You have to record tangos." So I decided I was going to do it. And I prepared some of the well-known tangos, and that was it.
Hey, Domingo, very nice, very nice. What did that mean, by the way? What's that about?
It means volver. It is to come back. And it's a very famous tango because it speaks about something that we all wonder. Is in the text it said that 20 years is nothing. I mean, then life passed so quickly, then you don't realize. Then
That's
you know,
true.
you just turn away, and 20 years there pass by, and it's a very famous one. Yeah.
The recording, by the way, we've most likely had it for the first time on radio here in New York. It will be released in January, so next month sometime you should be able to look for Placido Domingo's Tango album. Meanwhile, we are going to consider now a folk set that you have done of Mexican folk songs. Now,
Yes.
when will this be released?
This will be released in March or April. March or April.
So we're really looking ahead.
Yeah.
Now, here again, you grew up in Mexico,
Yes,
right?
that's right.
Did you encounter these songs? I mean, are these songs that in some way are part of your
Absolutely.
youth and so on?
Absolutely. In fact, some of the songs in this record, in fact, one of the songs I sing in the record, it was the very first time that I hit a G singing, and my mother started crying, because she said she really heard the tenor sound
How old were you?
on the G. I suppose I was about 15 or 14, you know. And I really hit a G, and she remembered with great emotion that moment. And all these songs, most of them, some of them they are new, but most of them there are the songs that I used to grow up. I think if in the tangos I have a big idol, which was Carlos Gardel. In the Mexican songs I have another idol, which was Jorge Negrete, which was a fantastic singer. I mean, the music that he recorded and the way he performed, and there are some films of him. It was such a great personality and such a warm, beautiful voice. It's really fantastic.
We don't know, at least I don't know the name here. So
No, it has. It's a pity. It should be. Maybe they should really pass some of his films, and they should do a festival, because he was a great, great artist. And in fact, he has an operatic voice.
Right. Well, I
He-
guess...
He even sang. He used to sing. I think he sang Traviata
Mhm.
once.
Which of these songs would you suggest for us?
There, all of them. They are really
You like them all?
beautiful. But I think you will have your choice in between Noche Azul or Noche Plateada. Both
Well,
are
both are about nights, right?
Yes, both are about night. One is Blue Night and the other one is Silver Night. And both are songs, and there are serenades. And both songs I used to bring as a serenade to my wife in Mexico when we meet, and I used to serenade her, really singing in the street.
His wife his wife or your wife to be at that time?
Well, my wife to be, yes.
To be,
my
yes,
girlfriend.
indeed. So, in the streets of Mexico with that song of the evening, and well, I guess it worked, huh?
Well, yes, I think so. We have a joke always in Mexico to say that the infuriated mothers-in-law to be, or the fathers-in-law to be, they will throw a pitcher of water, to somebody singing downstairs. I never had that.
Never happened. Never happened. Very good. Well, what did you accompany yourself with? You couldn't bring
It
the
was-
piano along.
No, it was the mariachi.
Oh, you had your-
It was the group. You will go to a place. You will hire the musicians. They will come with you. Most of the people they hire them to sing also, but I just went to hire them to play, and I was doing the
How would
singing.
that would work in New York? I mean, you
It
got a
will
few
be-
musicians over to Broadway and 73rd Street, and you just
Well, that will be beautiful,
I
I
guess
guess
so.
I guess it's difficult in a city as big as New York, and not only as big but as complicated. I
Yes,
should say.
indeed.
It could be the only thing. Can you imagine in one of those buildings of, I don't know, 25 or 30 floors? You would have to use amplifier and microphone in order to arrive.
But just think of all the ladies you could serenade at the same time.
Yes,
I
that's
mean, there's something to be said for that as well. We are examining the popular side of Placido Domingo's musical nature, and we have another unusual adventure, which is a duet with John Denver of all people. How did this happen? Now, that's
Well,
certainly-
I tell you, I have a friend, and a friend that is a really fan of Domingo, and he's a producer, which his name is Milton Okun, and
you know, Milt Oken,
yes.
excuse me for interrupting, Placido. Milt Oken was a great friend of everybody who loves American folk music. He produced all the Peter, Paul, and Mary records, and early John Denver, I know, and
Absolutely, yes.
so many others.
well, he heard me once in a Johnny Carson show, singing very softly on the street where you live, in Spanish. He said, "Oh, could be marvelous if Placido will do a record of this." So at the meantime, his association with John Denver has been, as you said, for a very long time, and he brought John Denver to a concert I was doing with Giulini in Los Angeles, and also to a performance of Samson and Delilah I was singing in San Francisco last year. And I say to John Denver how much I like his song, any song, then I would like to record it, because Milton has convinced me already to do a record. And once talking with John Denver, he said, of course, he will be very happy if I record it, and not only that, but he will write a song for me. So he wrote Perhaps Love, and after talking, we convinced him that we can sing it as a duet together. So this was not only the song, but we decided to call the album Perhaps Love, which is a very beautiful name, I suppose, and the song, I think, is really beautiful.
The more unexpected vocal duets, Placido Domingo, our guest today, and John Denver, in Denver's own composition, Perhaps Love. This sounds so nice together. I mean, the voices blend, and of all two voices that I would think couldn't possibly blend, it's John Denver and you with this great outpouring of sound, and John with a kind of a high and very mellow sounding, and yet it sounds as if you've kind of worked together and dovetailed everything.
Well, I think that when you are following a line, when you are following a text, you have to work on more or less on the same line. Of course, I am singing more or less with the same kind of amount of voice than John does it, and I think the voices blend very nicely.
Any other duets in the offing? You have any further plans? I mean, now that this worked so well.
Well, let's see. I don't know. I suppose I would like it. It's many complications with the recording companies, who is with whom, and so on.
Right.
But I really will enjoy doing it more. Yes.
Great. We are going to turn to Placido Domingo and songs for Christmas. It's almost there right now. But first is with us today. Christmas is coming, and since we've been sort of setting aside the opera for our conversations today in favor of tangos and folk songs and pop pieces, we now consider the Yuletide spirit. And first of all, what does Christmas mean to you as a youngster growing up? What is it like in Mexico?
I think Christmas has been always a fantastic family occasion for me, I guess for everybody. But in our family, really is a great tradition. We first in Spain when I was born, and the first years we spent an incredible Christmas. Always I have memories of never sleeping on Christmas Day.
Really?
And the festivity in Spain, it becomes a little more pagan than religious.
Well, that happens
Because,
here too,
yes,
right?
because everybody is a night that the most beautiful and delicious dishes are made, and desserts and so on. So we were having always a fantastic festivities. And
Is there an equivalent to Santa Claus?
we have it in now, yes, but in those days, no. We have the Three Kings, which is the Epiphany on the 6th of January, which that's the days of all the gifts. That's the
Oh,
day.
you
then
have to
the
wait.
gifts-
You have to wait till the 6th of
The
January.
6th of January, yes.
Oh, I see.
But anyways, a great party. That's concerning in Spain. Then in Mexico, even more. When I arrived to Mexico, there is a tradition which is quite unique, I suppose. Is before Christmas, the 16th of December, they start festivities which they are called posadas. So this is very bad for the industry. It's very bad for everybody because in those 8 days previous to Christmas, hardly there is no place, no office, no business than 3 people, 10 people, 20 people. They say they are sick and they never come to work because the posadas is a tradition. Then everybody makes parties every day previous to Christmas. So they have a very peculiar thing. They have something very traditional, which is in the posadas. They form in every party. They form 2 groups of people: the people that is inside of the house and the people that is out of the house. So the people that is out of the house with candles, they start to sing to the people that is inside of the house and say it, En nombre del cielo pedimos posada, pues no puede andar mi esposa amada. In few words, it means, in the name of heavens, we ask you for a posada. It means we ask you for a place to stay. It's because my poor wife cannot walk anymore. So the people inside answered, this is not a hotel, continue, this is, aquí no es mesón, this is not a hotel, just continue walking, say it, and don't bother us. And little by little, they, one strophe, the other one strophe, and the other one, until finally they realize is the Saint Joseph and the Virgin, Holy Virgin Mary, looking for a place in the way to Bethlehem, So finally they agreed, they said, okay, you can come in, and it's the big party. And it's a party every day on this tradition. So it's a very, very traditional time in Mexico. And of course, when Christmas arrives, it was also at home, not to sleep at all. And then we have the tradition of in Mexico, the tradition of the Christmas gifts, because that's already the American way.
So that happens on Christmas, not on Epiphany
No,
anymore.
but then what happened is, since we were used to the Epiphany also, we have 2 gifts, one on Christmas and the other one on the Epiphany. So
That's not bad. Good system. Tell us about the Christmas album, Placido Domingo. When did this idea arise, and which carols did you select? I mean, how did it all come together?
It was the idea also with Mil talking together, and said we should put a Christmas album. And in both albums, and perhaps Love and the Christmas album, I have had a great collaboration for a very, very talented composer, and he's conducting the orchestra in both records, which Lee Holdridge. He has been doing a lot of track sound for movies, a lot of, even he has a violin concerto, and he's an inspired composer. And in Perhaps Love, I am singing one of his songs, which is an American hymn. Is the theme from East of Eden, for the television series. And in this particular Christmas album, he wrote 2 songs. one which is very classical. It's called "O Joyful Children," which is the very, very beautiful song. And not only the music is beautiful, but the text is with one of the really popular writers, Mary Huckabee. The other song is "Christmas Time" this year. For me, it can be also that's a very famous lyricist, is
Carol
Carl
Connors.
Connors, as you can see. Is a beautiful song. I think it can become a popular Christmas song because the melody flows incredibly beautiful, and I can see people just like skating, ice skating through that music at the Rockefeller Center. Is then Lee, it's Christmas time this year. He wrote it here in New York. But the "Oh Joyful Children," we have a song that we were going to have in the album, and the last moment we don't like it. We don't think it was Christmas. It was a beautiful song, but not for Christmas. And Lee had the inspiration in that moment, and he wrote "Oh Joyful Children," being in
Really?
Vienna in 2 days. So it's really,
Wow,
it's
you
really
certainly hit it
wonderful.
lucky that time.
Really
That's
wonderful,
Great.
yes.
Placido, it has been a very great joy to talk with you, especially as the holiday approaches now. We should end up with one of the real biggies, right?
Well, I think that it was almost a must to record "White Christmas." So I think then that with that, I think I want to wish everybody happy Christmas, and I hope that they like the album. For years, and sometimes it's not the fact that you hear for years. You have heard it so many times, and you knew it was great, but you said, "Okay, I put it to rest," and then you hear it again, and you realize that there are no doubt when hits are hits, there is a reason.
When is the first time that you recall having a white Christmas? I mean, did you guess in Mexico it didn't happen too often, right?
The very first white Christmas I had, it was when I used to live in Teaneck, New Jersey, in the years of the City Opera. Yes. I have it about, I suppose it was about 66 or 67, yes. It was
And
quite beautiful.
Where will you be Christmas time this year?
Christmas time this year I will be in Sevilla, doing a very special program that I had the idea to do about all the music that has been inspired on Sevilla. So I'm involved in the program doing music from Carmen, from the Barber of Seville, from Don Giovanni, from Fidelio, from some Spanish zarzuelas, special music, new music wrote it now. And I think it's going to be very interesting.
Well, so we can look ahead to an album from all that at some point, I trust.
Probably, yes.
Now, listen, we've had your tango album, we've had your pop album with John Denver, the Christmas set, of course. What else of this non-operatic sort are you sort of cooking up?
Well, there are many possibilities. Immediately, there is a Spanish series of songs by a Mexican composer, which is Agustin Lara, which the only
Granada.
well-known song is Granada. But just like Granada, he wrote Murcia, he wrote Sevilla, he wrote Toledo, he wrote Madrid. So there are a variety of all the songs that he does. So I'm preparing
And then you ought to
that.
do Ponce and do a little something else beside
Yes.
Estrellita.
And I am preparing also an album of Neapolitan songs in a very,
great.
very Neapolitan, with very real Neapolitan flavor, I hope.
Beautiful. So, Placido, you have much to share with us and tell us about next time. So,
Wonderful, Bob.
we'll join you here,
Thank
and you'll
you.
join us here very soon again, I hope.
Thank you, with great pleasure.